3 different textures of watercolor paper in one block? This could be interesting. Hi, Shannon Rowe Jackson here, also known as Caution Artist at Play, because I love to play with a bunch of different art supplies, and that's what we're going to do today because I am trying out a new paper, well, a new to me paper. My friend Angela Clark really likes the Meeden Watercolor Paper, and so when Meeden reached out to me and asked if there was anything I wanted to try of theirs, I was like, yeah, I'd really love to try your paper. And so they were generous enough to send me this paper. And I think it's going to be fun to do some sort of mixed media kind of video today because there are 3 different textures of paper in this block alone. And so I want to see how each of these papers holds up to a bunch of different art supplies. So we're going to be playing around with watercolors and crayons and acrylic markers, and we are going to put this paper to the test. So let's just jump on in. Okay, let's take a quick look at this paper. This is their watercolor paper. It is 100% cotton and it is acid free. And as I mentioned before, there's 5 of the rough, 15 sheets of cold press, and then 10 sheets of hot press, which is smoother. Cold press is in between, and rough, of course, has the most texture. And this is a 10 by 7 inch block. Now, because it's a block, that means it is going to be glued down on all 4 sides. Underneath this first sheet here, we have the rough paper. You can kind of see how much texture that has under the light. And I actually like that they have different colored paper in between each set of papers, so you can tell. So this one's under the yellow paper. I'm just going to grab my palette knife here and get this layer of rough paper up. So I'm going underneath actually all 5 pieces of the rough paper so I could get down to the next layer so we can take a look at our cold press paper. And I'm just going around gently. There's a hole on the side where it's not glued so that you can slip a palette knife in there. And then you just go around the edges gently to separate it. I'm not going to separate it from the block completely. And those pages are still glued together, so if I wanted to use those as a block, I can. And now under this green sheet of paper, we are going to have our cold press, which cold press is really great for just general watercolor use. And you can see it has a little bit of texture, but not as much as the rough, but just enough that it's going to be fun for some watercolor techniques. And then, of course, the smoothest paper is going to be underneath this layer. So again, I'm going to go underneath all of the cold press paper so that I can get down to where the hot press paper is. So that's one thing that's a little bit odd about this, because if you want to work on it in a block, but you want the cold press or the hot press, you're going to have to rip some layers up off that block. But again, if you leave each of them kind of glued together within their own section, it can still work as a block. And I'm actually going to remove the paper when I go to work on it because I want to work smaller. Here's the hot press. You can see it's much smoother than the other 2. That one's going to be great. We're going to start off with the hot press, actually. So as I mentioned, I removed it because I want to work smaller, but I also want to see how well it stays down with tape. Obviously, the benefit of it being in a block is that it's going to dry flat. But I'm going to tape my edges, and right now I just have my corners hinged because I needed to set up where I wanted my paper for filming. I will come in a little bit and tape all my edges. I just kind of got a little bit excited and jumped right in, but I will tape those edges because I'm going to be using liquid on this paper. My theory, though, is if it's going to dry flat when it's taped down, it will definitely dry flat on the block, and again, I just wanted to work smaller. And I'm actually using the cards from the new Color Cubes by Sarah Renee Clark as inspiration. These are royalty-free images, so they can be used as references. Typically, I work from my own references, but I didn't want to have to think. I just wanted to grab some pretty pictures and start drawing because this is about the paper today and much less about the artwork. So I am working with various kinds of crayons on this paper, and I'm going to be coming in with colored pencil for detail. And I'm actually using my Holbein melts to mix them because the Holbein melts will actually wash out water-soluble crayons. They don't wash out the Neocolor ones. This is the only brand that the melts don't necessarily play great with, is Caran for some reason, but it plays wonderfully with the water-soluble Caran products. So what I did was I actually came in with a Neocolor one and masked out my sun so that that would not blend in with everything else, because the melts don't melt down the Neocolor ones. And then I'm coming in with my Neocolor 2s and regular colored pencils, and I'm using the melts because then I can mix them all together because it will melt down the colored pencil as well. Otherwise, I would probably just use water. But the melts dry fairly fast as well. And so this made it so I could work quickly between layers as opposed to just working with water alone. So basically, I'm just using them so I can get as mixed media as possible with this. Now, there are some areas where it wasn't completely dry and it made it a little bit more difficult to come in with my regular colored pencils. I'm using my Holbein colored pencils today. But there are areas that are closer to the sun that I want to be lighter, so I'm coming in with my lighter colors and lighter layers. And then for the things that are closer to the viewer, the different reeds and grass, I'm coming in with my darker colors. And for a hot press paper, this held up to all these layers really, really well. Like, that was why I was doing this. Normally with a hot press paper, a lot of times I'll use it for just 100% colored pencil. I didn't really have a lot of time to do that. And using the crayons really helped speed up the process, and it allowed me to see just how many layers, what different kind of media this paper could take. And it really took a beating. It held up really, really well to all these different layers. I was also able to scrape off some of the crayon in places where I wanted more detail with a craft knife. The paper held up really well to that also. And then in this area, the area to the right side of my page, like where I'm working right now, that gets a little bit mucky and I don't really like it a whole lot. So you're going to see me come in and remove some of those layers with an eraser. And it held up well to that also. And these materials work great together. Using the melts was really cool because I was able to blend out my colored pencil along with my water-soluble crayons. Typically, if I was using like OMS, which is odorless mineral spirits, OMS doesn't typically blend out things that are water-soluble, and so I wouldn't be able to mix these two things together the way I have been. Because there's some places where I don't really like the way the colored pencil was coming out, so I actually blended it in and blurred it out with the background a little bit, and that was a lot of fun too. And then after I erased, I was able to come in with more layers. So overall, I was really, really impressed with this paper. I am looking forward to trying it with just colored pencil when I have more time. There are some papers out there that colored pencil will kind of dig into, especially like the watercolor papers. So I'm curious to see how well it will do with just colored pencil. But the fact that I was able to get this many layers on this paper with crayons and colored pencil and still be able to come on top of my colored pencil, that was fantastic. So here's my finished piece. And again, I'm not trying to be exact to these reference photos. This is all just fun and play. Now we're going to move on to the cold press paper. I wanted to show you this fun water basin that Meeden also sent me. They were really generous. They sent me this, they sent me another pad of paper, and they also sent me a huge watercolor palette that I've had my eyes on for a long time. So you'll see those things in future videos. For this piece, I'm looking to do something with a little bit of like line and wash. You know, I'm going to come in with my Micron pens and my watercolors and just play around. And again, this is the cold press paper, so this has a little bit more texture than the hot press paper, but it definitely does not have the same kind of texture as the rough paper. It's a great in-between paper. A lot of watercolor artists love cold press paper because you can still get some pretty good detail on it, but you're also going to get these fun kind of granulating washes and just a nice texture that holds on to the paint really well. So of course, for this one, I'm like, I got to use my watercolors because it's just great for watercolor. But I want to see how well a fine line pen would go on it too. It does go on really well without it being too janky, if you know what I mean. If there was a lot of texture, it would be skipping over that texture a lot. I was able to get the detail that I needed. Now I'm coming in with the background. I'm using my Schmincke Horadam watercolor palette. No real reason other than the fact that I hadn't reached for it in a long time and I just wanted to play around with it, and it had all the colors I needed. Because again, I'm kind of using these color cube cards for inspiration, so I'm using the color palette as inspiration as well. I'm not going to be exact about it, but this palette seemed to have all the colors that I needed. So that was the main reason why I reached for it. And again, I just wanted to play with it because I hadn't in a while. I'm not going to try to be exact to this reference either. I'm getting really wishy-washy. I want to do a lot of wet into wet in this piece because I want to see how much water it can hold up to. And I'm letting things blur and bloom and cauliflower all over the place because I want this piece to be a little bit more whimsical, a little bit more magical, and I think watercolor really lends itself beautifully to that feeling. this like nice ethereal, magical feeling, especially when you are doing scenes from a forest. And I'm not going to try to be too detailed about that foreground either. I'm letting all these colors wash together. I'm putting splashes of color, I'm putting splashes of clean water in to create these little cells in certain places. Now I'm going to come in and work on the mushrooms themselves. I'm being very careful. I'm mixing some shadow colors using colors that I've already used in the piece so that the white of this isn't completely white, but it, you know, it's going to be lighter than the areas around it. And of course, whenever you paint something that's inherently white, it's going to be taking on the colors that are around it. Whether it's in the highlight and you've got a nice warm highlight, but if you've got blues around, that might be what shows up in the shadows. So a quick way to do it, if you don't know the exact color that's in a shadow area, is to just kind of makeshift something out of the colors that are already surrounding it. Then I'm coming in with my reds, and I'm going around those little areas where I had drawn out some of the little white spiky things on the tops of the mushrooms, but I'm going to come in with some gel pen later on as well. And then once this layer has dried, I'm going to come back in with another micron. This is a different size. This time I'm using the brush nib because I want it to be a little bit more painterly, but I'm going for a kind of whimsical, foresty little illustration here. And so that worked really well also. It worked great over the watercolor as long as the watercolor was dry. And it helped define those mushrooms just a little bit more with their background, like against their background. Then I'm just adding in some little details in the foreground, and I'll come back in with my paint as well. I love microns because they are really waterproof. And I should mention, these microns are like the sepia color. They're like a dark brown. They're not quite black. So it's a nice dark color to create definition, but it's also a color that would be found in a scene like this. So it's not quite as jarring as doing a black pen, although a black pen would be fine as well in something this dark. And then I'm just coming in with that gel pen. Some of the areas I tried to get experimental with. I want to see if it would spur out really pretty, like stars, if I put it in the wet spots of the mushrooms. I didn't like that, so I covered it up. And I'll come back in once that's dry and re-add them in. Again, this isn't about perfection. I just want to see how much this paper could take. This was just as impressive to me as the hot press was. It really took a lot of different layers. I was able to do really wishy-washy washes in the beginning, lots of wet into wet, and the tape has held it down really well. And something else I want to comment on when it comes to the tape, this is artist tape. And one of the other reasons why I wanted to take it off the block and use tape is because I wanted to see how well the paper held up to me removing tape. And I did not experience any tearing with any of these pieces when I was taking the tape off. Obviously, this isn't a high-tack tape because it is an artist tape, and I'm being careful to pull away from the artwork. But some papers, it doesn't matter what you do, they will tear under tape. That's not the case with this paper, at least with these 3 pieces that I did. I had very good luck with the tape. So even if you don't want to get this block and you want to try to get some of their paper, like just a hot press block or just a whatever, if you just want to get some of their paper and you don't want to use it on the block, if you use an artist tape, it should hold up pretty well. And I'm just going to sign that, do a few touch-ups on it. This was one of my favorite pieces. I go back and forth. The sunset one, I'm a crazy sky lady. I love the skies. Like, even though these aren't my references, I'm very much choosing images that are close to my heart. I love whimsy. I love mushrooms. I love forests. I am an earth-loving girl. And then I love me some sunsets and skies. But you can see here, it warped a little bit, but it dried pretty flat with that tape. And this is the final piece on the cold press. All right, we're moving on to the rough, baby. This one, I'm like, I want to do some paint, because if we've got all this texture, that means we can use a thicker paint. So I am bringing in my acrylic gouache. I'm using some of the Turner acrylic gouache along with my Holbein acrylic gouache, the classics, you know, and I'm coming in mostly with my base layers for this. And then I'm going to come in later on with some acrylic brush markers and some water-based Pitt pens to do some shading. And so you're going to see how that works as well. Again, getting wicked mixed media about it. I love me some mixed media play. I'm going to be really sloppy at first, but then I'm going to refine with my pens as time comes on, because at this point, I'm on my third piece. I just want to have some messy, good fun. And I'm actually doing this while I am video chatting with my friends, Lindsay Wyrick, the Frugal Crafter, the Clark girls, Karen and Angela. We actually had a play date together through video chat. And so I had done the mushroom one this morning, and then this is in the afternoon when I'm video chatting. So I was a little distracted. So I allowed myself to get messy and not be a perfectionist. But it comes together in the end. I want to be a little bit more illustrative with this one and fun and playful because it's donuts. And again, this is one that's near and dear to my heart. I am a sucker for a strawberry frosted donut. Oh my gosh. Dunkin's strawberry frosted donut is delectable. What is your favorite donut or your favorite sweet treat if you don't get down with the donuts? But I love me some donuts. I like the way they look. I think they're cute. I think they're fun. And man, do I love the strawberry frosted. So when I saw this image in my new color cubes, I was like, yeah, I'm painting some donuts. Again, it was another, I don't have to think about this reference. It's there for me. And let's just play around on this paper. Now, this paper held up really, really well. Again, it is the same thickness as the others, and it has a nice texture that grips the paint really, really well. This paper is a 300 GSM, 140 pounds, so it's pretty good. It's pretty rugged. It's not the thickest out there, but it's certainly not the thinnest, and so far it has held up to every type of medium that I have thrown at it. I'm really, really impressed because this is not a very expensive paper as far as 100% cotton paper goes. I think it's a really, really good deal. I love the fact that they combined the different kinds of textures in one block so that you can get a sample. I do think that concept might be a little bit better in a pad of paper so you can get to it more easily and, still get the main function of what's happening, because in a block, if you want to go back and forth between the kinds, you're having to rip parts of the block off. I mean, again, I didn't rip it off completely. I think I'd still be able to use the block because I left a lot of the paper from each category glued together. But that was just something that I love the uniqueness of it, but I don't know that it's as functional in a block as it would be in a pad. I do love that they separated them by color. So I thought that was pretty neat that there was a nice protective piece of paper in between each, and each one was a different color. So you can see just from looking at the edge of the block where the next set of paper starts. I think that was really cool as well. But I do love the idea of them mixing the different textures so that you can get a good sampling. I had actually requested some of the cold press paper, so they sent me a pad of that as well. So I'll be using that a lot in the future for my watercolors because it really is a great paper, and I do think later on I will be buying more when I run out of this. And I'm curious to see how the hot press does with just 100% colored pencil as well. So if you want to see that, let me know. But yes, this paper, it is rough, so it has a great texture to hold a bunch of different media. This particular one I'm working on now, it held up to the acrylic gouache and the acrylic brush markers really, really well, but it wasn't so rough that I was getting a weird kind of texture when I was painting. It didn't take much for me to cover the texture, which was really, really good, especially adding just a little bit of water to the acrylic gouache, which makes it spread a little bit further. I didn't have all these weird, terrible holes where it wasn't, getting coverage. So I thought that was really good. And I was still able to come in and get some fine lines with my Faber-Castell Pit Artist dual pens. These pens are their big, thick, chunky Pit Artist pens. One side has a brush marker, the other side has a fine liner on it. And I was able to beef things up a little bit, get some shadowing in there. This is one way that I actually love to work. I like working with my gouache or acrylic gouache and then coming in with details using my acrylic brush markers, and then coming in to add a little bit of dimension using water-based markers. This is how I work a lot in my sketchbook, actually. I've been using acrylic brush markers a ton in my sketchbook. It's not something I do a lot on the channel, but these are a lot of techniques that I use in my spare time when I'm not filming, and it's always a lot of fun. And I think that the transparency of the water-based markers works really, really well to add just a little bit of dimension to the flatness of the acrylic gouache and of the acrylic brush markers without overpowering it. You're going to see me come in and lay down a little bit of color and then spread it out with my brush to maximize that transparency so that's not so jarring on there. It's a lot of fun. And every time I look at this painting, I am craving donuts. I was craving donuts the whole time I was creating it. Again, this is not going to be exact to the reference photo on the color cube card, but it was my whimsical kind of interpretation of it, and it was a great way to test out this paper. So overall, I really enjoyed each of these textures of paper. I think Meeden does paper really, really well, and I'm excited to use this in the future. Again, they did send this to me for free, but this is my 100% opinion of it. I requested it because I already had on good authority that this was going to be a good paper I could get use out of, and I was not disappointed. Here are all 3 of my finished pieces on the different textured paper. Let me know what your favorite is. I don't know. I had a lot of fun with each of them. I go back and forth between the sunset and the mushrooms, but boy, I really do like those donuts. So let me know what you think in the comments below. I had a ton of fun with this today, and I think it was really nice and relaxing to just sit down, play with different art supplies, try out a different paper. I really, really enjoyed this paper. I think it held up really well to all the different materials I used on it, and I'm looking forward to using it more in the future for more finished projects. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Have you tried this paper before? If so, did you like it? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe if you haven't already so you can see more content like this. And if you're able to, hype it a little bit because that always helps. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. You have a fantastic day. Bye.